I'm Amy Zawi with the Jerusalem Connection Red Alert Report for April 1st. What women's rights? Viacom CBS Network had planned to host an event celebrating Women's History Month, and they invited Linda Sarsour, a vehement anti-Semite, a proponent of the BDS, and a colluder with known terrorists. And she claims to be a feminist who was invited to sit on the panel. Sarsour recently has a new book out, and Rashida Tlaib, U.S. Congresswoman, was seen on social media promoting her friend's book while wearing a shirt depicting Israel being wiped off the face of the earth. So we can see here again another example of Democrats not only accepting anti-Semitic activity, but even cheering it on, while traditional Jewish members of the Democrat Party sit back and do nothing in the name of tolerance and supporting women. But what about feminism? Inclusiveness, equal rights, and how Muslim women address it, and how they vilify and ignore women who try to help it or who are truly suffering. Do either of these Muslim women have any clues about the realities that women face in the Middle East? I think they do. Israel is the only place Arab women can attend school through the terminal degree level. Moreover, more than 50% of attendees of graduate school in Israel are female. No place else in the Middle East can women in general, let alone Arab Muslim or Christian Arab women, can move about as freely and pursue their own dreams as in Israel. No employment laws in the 50 Muslim nations that surround Israel protect women like they do in Israel and provide for equal pay and pay standards. In Syria has prisons that are housing over 468 women. However, these organizations, these BDS organizations, Sarsour and the like, spend thousands and thousands of dollars and time and effort criticizing Israel for the 40 Palestinian women they have in their prisons who are there because of convictions of being, most of them, for known ties to terrorists and terrorism activities. Yet the women in the Syrian prisons, nobody even discusses them. The women in the Syrian prisons are subjected to physical and psychological abuse and rampant sexual abuse, and yet nobody stands up for them. They are often imprisoned falsely or for some questionable circumstance, and yet the railing is always against Israel. One thing would be to equally distribute the passion and effort for the Palestinian women in prisons in general, but there is nary a word regarding the 468 in Syrian prisons since 2011. This has been reported on the elderofzion.org website, and statistics come from the London-based Action Group for Palestinians, if you decide to look it up. Not only does Sarsour and Tlaib and Omar, two U.S. Congresswomen, Democrats, do nothing for the plight of women who truly suffer, especially those in their homelands or living under the culture and religion that they share, they go on and defame and blast the very people who are trying to do something to help these women and bolster their position. I wonder, out of all the BDS activities, the apartheid weeks going on colleges, where young co-eds who are often very in tune with women's issues, at least in the West, whether these young women even know what's going on in the Middle East and in Muslim nations, and how these female BDSers not only ignore it, they purposefully divert attention from it, in order to criticize the only democracy in the region that actually offers any hope and freedom for women. At the Anti-American Muslims for Palestine conference in Chicago just last year, Sarsour equated Israel to white supremacy. Keep in mind that Israel's latest ambassador to Azerbaijan is an Arab Christian. Women in the Middle East have no safer or freer place to be than in Israel or Judea and Samaria. Recall that Sarsour went after survivors of Muslim abuse. In 2011, Sarsour posted on Twitter that conservatives Bridget Gabriel and Ayan Hirsi Ali, well, I can't even tell you what she posted on Twitter. You're going to have to look it up because it was so vile and so misogynist for one woman to say against two other women who are working hard to protect more women. She actually said they don't deserve to be women. If we're going to have a Women's History Month, let's actually study some history about women. The plight of women in the Middle East, specifically Muslim nations, and specifically the progress that or the safety that they find in Israel needs to be part of the discussion. To attempt to legitimize Sarsour and support her book and her message is an attempt to legitimize anti-Semitism. And that takes feminism back decades, if not a century. Just once, I'd like to see Sarsour, Tlaib, Omar rise up and come to the defense of the women who were jailed in UAE, a woman who was jailed in the UAE for replying to a man who was sexting her, and she told him to stop, and she used some harsh words. Just once, I'd like to see these women stand up for a Saudi woman who was was beaten for being raped by a family member. The crime was against the victim, and the victim was punished for it. Just once, I'd like to see them champion some sort of feminist value in their own lands from which they came. They do instead attack Israel only, the only Jewish state among the 50 Muslim states, and that Jewish state is the one that works towards values for women and men and all types of people that live within their borders, both culturally and within their justice and legal system. More than that, I'd like to see the members of the Democrat Party purge these power grabbers and disingenuous feminists who cloak themselves in the supposed social justice as a mere tactic to take their anti-Semitism and infuse it and infect it into all society. In the meantime, I ask you for your prayers, because I want to stop these women, and I'm not a militant person. My first choice in how to actually stop these women is to have them see the light, a come to Jesus moment where the scales of their death masks are removed and their eyes are transformed by truth, and they recant their ways and join forces to defend all that is good. This would be the best case scenario. This is happening to a degree, believe it or not. David Garrison, a PhD from university, wrote a book in 2014 called A Wind in the House of Islam. He also published an article last June in Newsweek discussing the findings of his book. That indeed, people are converting from Islam to Christianity at numbers greater than we might have thought. There's no single factor to talk about why this is so, but he lists a few in his book I'd like to share with you. 1, an increased number of increase in prayer in general for Muslims. 2, intentional evangelism directed towards Muslims after centuries of Christians fighting with them. An exponential increase in biblical translations into colloquial languages spoken by various Muslim groups. Other factors included internet, satellite, and access to television and radio, information from the West. Global diasporas, that is, that Muslims are emigrating out of their countries into Christian populations. A post-colonial context allowing Muslims to consider the gospel outside maybe an oppressive regime that they would have experienced centuries ago. And then there was the counterintuitive elements, such as Muslims studying the Quran for themselves and being dissatisfied with the holes and lack of continuity. And then the last common theme, excuse me, which is often dismissed by those in the West, is that of dreams and visions. Dr. David noted that when he was interviewing converts, many of them started with the phrase, "I had a dream." God has been speaking to people in dreams and visions for millennia. Let's not discount his ability to do it in this day and age. So you see here, my point is that God is reaching down to gather up his children, no matter how far they have fallen, or no matter what fallen fold they were born into. So while my blood does boil at some of the actions of these women and many of the men who surround them in the Islamic and in the progressive movement, as much as I want them to stop and be silenced, my first choice is to have that happening with some sort of conversion to the one true God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of the Holy Scriptures, and not Allah and not the Quran. And then after that, we can have a discussion about the secular progressives. Shavua Tov. Have a great week.